Meanwhile, this from the Ontario government's website. As part of its commitment to tackle Ontario's housing crisis by prioritizing Ontario families and homebuyers, the government is increasing the non-resident speculation tax rate to 20%, closing loopholes to fight tax avoidance, and expanding the tax to apply province-wide, effective today. The changes made to establish the tax as the most comprehensive in Canada were announced as the government prepares to unveil the next components of its housing supply action plan designed to build more homes in Ontario. Joining me to follow up on this, the host of Simply Real Estate, Sundays at noon on News Talk 1010, Todd C. Slater. The C's a middle initial. His name's not Toddsy, as some people seem to think. Todd, good to have you along. Is this going to make houses cheaper?
No, but I think they're trying to get some more votes, because this is definitely not going to stop houses from going up, Jerry. You know, it's kind of funny because when this first came into play back in 2018, in 2017 when they did it, there was no warning when they threw in the 15%. Now all of a sudden they're going across, and this is the thing, they're going across Ontario instead of just the Golden Horseshoe area. And now at 20%, they think that this is going to stave off foreign buyers from buying. But, you know, this has not been the reason why we had the run-up in prices and the problem with our inventory. So this isn't going to add more property into the mix, not a chance.
Okay, well, there are a couple of things that strike me, and I may be wrong about this, and that's why you're here. First of all, this is not a foreign buyer's tax. It's a non-resident tax. So it doesn't just apply to somebody sitting in China and shoveling money into the GTA.
Well, this is the thing, and here's part of the problem. So what they're going to do is they're also going to turn around and offer a rebate. So if somebody does, let's say foreign students come in, they bought a property, they're going to have to pay the buyer tax, but then on top of that, they're saying they're going to give a rebate to you 4 years later if you decide to stay. This isn't well planned, okay? Not at all. This is just a knee-jerk reaction because you've got a few of the people that, you know, the NIMBYs, not my backyard, they don't want to turn around and think that there's foreign buyers actually, you know, accumulating any kind of real estate. And so again, it's when we talk about non-resident, this is a problem. And you know how they define it and how the interpretation, it's such a small percentage. And I know that, you know, some of the conversation is that they are doing money laundering. So what's the government going to do with the extra 5%? And I would love for them to tell us what they're going to do with the extra 5% they're going to use.
All right. Well, if the allegation is that there's money laundering going on, we have police, we pay for police, we pay for people to investigate that sort of thing, find the money launderers, do something about it. Rather than use the blunt force, broad paintbrush of charging anybody who's not going to live in a home a 20% tax. But it strikes me also, Todd, that if a home down the street sells to a non-resident buyer, and then another home somewhere else in the neighborhood sells to a non-resident buyer, and they pay that 20%, that's actually starting to drive up the expectation I have for what I could get from my home.
Well, you know, you nailed something on the head there, Jerry, because that was the conversation that, in fact, you and I had it back in 2016 to 17 when the market was frothy and people, their anticipation was, and you know, not to, you know, bring a segregation to a certain group, but they always said the Chinese buyers were walking up with a briefcase of cash, and that was what everybody was hoping for. In other words, it's amazing how sellers were saying, I hope a foreign buyer drives up my value. Now, this is the sellers. Now, again, we don't have an answer for the buyers because we don't have the inventory. And Steve Clark, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, you know, he admits, you know, there is not a magic, fix here. Why they are doing this, I think, is all semantics, and they're just trying to gain some extra votes.
All right, let's talk about how this specifically would affect your business or not. And that is, you are in the business of purchasing property and renting property out. So, in other words, you're the owner, you're not a resident. Do you have to pay the tax?
No, and this is not going to be applicable to, let's say an Ontario citizen and somebody that isn't going to be residing in the property. So this does not have a reflection on people that are real estate investors. What may happen, and the government is toying around with it again, and we have to be very careful with the federal government at this point because, again, the way they have structured it, we could be looking at some kind of capital gains on your primary residence, and they're looking at potentially changing the down payment when you're buying a second property. So in other words, instead of 20% down, they may push the requirements to 25 or 30% down. So they're trying to use kind of manipulation to try to cool a market, but that's not going to be the solution. It never has been. And one of the things, and I'm pretty sure that I can echo the sentiments of all real estate brokers here in Ontario, they don't like government intervention, okay? They're not going to help solve the problem. And that buyer tax didn't solve the problem, and increasing the tax is not going to solve the problem. What they have to do is get off their butts, and they have to turn around and come up with some real solution to bring us more inventory.
This is what the government has announced as part of its commitment to tackling Ontario's housing crisis by prioritizing Ontario families and homebuyers. The government is increasing the non-resident speculation tax to 20% effective today. So how do they define non-resident then, Todd? It's non-resident in the house, non-resident in Ontario, Canada? What's the definition?
Yeah, they're basically saying, aren't citizens or permanent residents in Canada. So this is the thing. So this is why it doesn't really affect you and I per se, other than the fact that when they turn around and they keep, and again, it's a complete scapegoat as far as I'm concerned. It's sort of like, Jerry, the game is like, here, I'm going to do something with my left hand, but look over here at my right, it's doing something else. Well, this is the problem that we have here. And so as far as it's basically somebody that's not a permanent resident in Canada or that they're not a citizen. So those are the people that are going to be adversely affected by this. But again, 5%, let's think about that number for a second. We've watched the price escalation over the last several years. 5% is a drop in the bucket. When you think about price, if a $1 million house goes up by 50,000, it's a 5% increase. Okay, so let's say next year it's gone up by 10%. They basically have gained, their increase is only up 5% themselves, and they've already backed off the 5% that they had to pay. So it's not going to inhibit people. Any form of foreign investment this is not going to slow that part of it down.
Now, some people worry that there are companies, and some people have written in with company names, but there are any number of them, and maybe you have one of them, buying up property and then renting it out, and they believe that drives up cost. First of all, you've just explained this doesn't apply to Canadian companies purchasing property. Does it drive up cost?
No. When the Canadian companies, when you think about this, and keep in mind, the individual units, and this is where you've got the individual buyer that will buy, let's say, brand new condominiums when they come to the market. So the builders do need some investors to buy these. It's not going to always go to end user. We have a rental issue as well. We don't have enough rental properties, and this is going to be an increasing number. That percentage is going to go up. Right now, we float around 35% of Canadians are going to require a rental property. It's going to go up to 40%, and so we need this. So the companies that are in place, and a lot of these people invest in them. You see, this is the thing. It's kind of a double-edged sword. They invest in REITs, they put in their registered funds, and they expect a return. Well, the REITs are the ones that will buy a lot of these big properties, and they will rent them out. We need rental properties as much as we need home ownership properties.
All right, and somebody wrote that the coming conditions will cool the market, that the economy is going to retract.
Look, we've got inflation. We've got some increase in interest, rates. That's okay. We need to cool the real estate off a little. It's not going to go backwards. I repeat this a million times a week. This is not a bubble. We have a shortage. It will remain that way. But what we do is we need a balanced market, and hopefully, and this isn't going to do anything, by the way. This isn't going to balance the market. Only inventory and interest rates are going to balance the market.
All right. And how much over the speed limit, Todd, do you think you can drive and avoid a ticket?
Well, gee, Jerry, I would never think of speeding, but I don't know. 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers? I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do to us.
Okay, well, the reason I'm asking is because I'm going to ask our traffic cop that very question coming up next. Todd C. Slater will be with you on Sunday on Simply Real Estate. Thanks very much.